Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Kate, aka the Disney Cicerone, and with me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, Jackie, aka Wishes Mama. And tonight, we have a really fun topic for you guys, which is tips for waiting in line with your family, which we thought was somewhat timely considering all of the changes with the new Lightning Lane system. Yes. There are lots of people having a lot of anxiety about having to wait longer with their children in lines or just wait longer for themselves in lines. And so we thought we would give a little bit of information on how to make that a little easier for you. Jackie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. Yeah, it's so funny that I feel like, why have we not covered this before, right? Like, right. We've maybe touched on a couple tips here and there in some of our other topics, but like, we've not done an entire episode dedicated to waiting in line, which is such a huge part when you visit the Disney parks. So I'm glad we're tackling it now. We've kind of gathered a bunch of information from our Mom Street community, from Kate and I's experience. So some of this you may have heard before. Hopefully we give you some new tips that maybe you haven't heard or didn't think of. But ultimately the goal is just to give you the information all in one place. So that way when you're planning for your trip, and you're panicking about having to wait in line, you can come here and we will have lots of good information for you.
We could have used this at D23 because everywhere was a line. All the things were lines. Just lines. So many lines. As far as the eye could see, there were lines.
Yep. And you know, that's not far off from the parks, unfortunately.
No, it's true. It's true. Yeah. So I think that, you know, where we can start here is knowing that there will be lines at Disney regardless of when you go. People are always saying, like, when can I go when I won't have to wait in line very long? I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. When you go, you're going to have to wait in line for something at some point. Maybe you get luck out and there's some short ones. But some times of the year are a little bit better than others. It's a little bit hard to predict. We did a whole episode, episode 55, on the best time to go to Disney. So if you're looking for that information, that's where we suggest that you head if you want to try to figure out when to go to maybe try to avoid some of those crowds. It's honestly very kind of hit and miss these days.
Yeah, and especially I feel like in the last several years, we've really seen kind of the crowds even out, so to speak, kind of throughout the year. There's always the busy times, right? Holidays and, you know, when you've got like other events going on, Run Disney events, things like that. But really overall, things have kind of evened out throughout the entire month. So like Kate said, go to that episode if you want more information about when to go based on lines and weather and all that good stuff. We already covered all that. So head there and then come back and see us here.
Yes, absolutely. So it looks like, Jackie's, you've got a few of tips and notes to start us off here. Do you want to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, so we've got some notes and then we'll kind of hop into some different ideas to give you guys that might be helpful for your particular situation if you do get stuck in waiting in lines. But a couple of things before we jump there is the first thing that I always mention to people who are worried about lines is getting to the parks early can significantly reduce your wait times in the morning for those first few hours, right? You've heard us talk about rope drop. Hopefully you all know what that is. If you don't know what rope drop is, that just really essentially means getting there so that way you're ready and in line to head to your first attraction as soon as you're able.
Before the opening time.
Yes.
Before the opening time for the park. I think that's real critical.
Exactly. Yes. So if you are on property, remember at Disney World, you do get that 30 minutes of, I don't even remember what they call it. It used to be early magic hours.
Magic hours?
Extra magic hours. Early morning magic.
Early morning.
One of those terms is right.
It. I don't know.
But yeah, so if you're on property, be sure to utilize that. Same thing goes for Disney World and Disneyland, right? Like getting there early is so beneficial to maximize your time for some of those rides that later in the day will have a longer wait.
And with Disneyland, I think it's critical both places, but Disneyland is especially important to do this because of all the locals that come in the afternoon and the evening. The parks really fill up during that time, but you can go on all kinds of things in the morning if you get there early before those crowds kind of pile in the parks. So definitely worth it at Disneyland for sure, and Disney World, but Disneyland for that reason.
Yes. And I do want to mention that in this episode, we are going to be talking about tips that could really apply to any sort of line that you wait in. You know, there are more than just lines at the rides at Disney parks, unfortunately. So whether that comes to food, if you're waiting on your transportation, if you're waiting on a bus or something like that, all of these hopefully can apply to you in all of those situations. So keep that in mind. They're not just for waiting in the queues for attractions.
Right. Any kind of line. even at D23 next time. Still very fresh in my mind. Sorry. All the lines.
I noticed.
Ooh, yes. So there are a select few rides that do have a single rider lines. Now, we've kind of talked about this in the past, that if you have small children, single rider lines are probably not for you.
Right. Unless it's something that you can get away with, like both parents doing a single rider line in place of like a child swap situation. But that really depends on your party and the ride and your situation when it comes to that.
Right. But if you have older kids and you don't mind splitting your party up, that's really critical. Don't say like, oh, but we're together. Like, you can't do that in the single rider line. You're going to be split up. Expect to be split up. Maybe once in a blue moon, you might end up riding together, but you can't expect that. But if you have older kids, that is an option. Do you want to talk about the rides that's available on?
Yeah. So at Disney World, there are just a few. Over at Hollywood Studios, there are two. There is Rock and Roller Coaster and Smuggler's Run. The Rock and Roller Coaster single rider line is not great, if I'm being completely honest. It's not as often that you have single riders in that line for whatever reason, just the nature of the attraction. So that can often be just as long as the standby line. So that one I would maybe opt to just kind of weigh your odds and see how far backed up that line is before you fully commit to using single rider for that particular ride.
Right.
Now with Smuggler's Run, it's a great option as long as you don't have a preference for which job you get. So Smuggler's Run has
engineer club.
Yeah. Yes. So Smuggler's Run, if you haven't ridden it before, has 3 different jobs when you do the attraction to pilot the Millennium Falcon. So it's pilot and then gunner and then the engineer. So 9.5 times out of 10, you're going to end up an engineer if you do single rider, because they're going to put you kind of at the end of a party. So as long as you don't really have a preference on which particular role you do, that single rider line is great. If you really want to be a pilot, don't do single rider, because you don't have a choice, unfortunately, when it comes to that. So kind of like Kate was saying, where you don't have a choice to stick together. If you're going together in a single rider, you really don't have the option to tell the cast member, hey, I want to do pilot. They're probably going to tell you, well, unfortunately, I can't accommodate that. You're going to have to wait in the standby line if you want to do that.
Right. Now, weren't they testing a single rider line for Rise of Resistance? I'm getting some comments about that.
Yes. So they did test it at like the last 2 weeks of July, but it is currently not available in this moment as we are recording this podcast mid-August of 2024. So it was available for a while.
In Hollywood Studios, not in Disneyland, because there's 2 Rise of the Resistance. So.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So the thing about that one is it really truly skips like half of the beginning of the ride. So that's a good option if you're someone who's ridden Rise of the Resistance several times and you don't mind, but you're going to miss the pre-show with Rey and BB-8. And you're also going to miss the whole like pre-show ship part.
Right.
I don't want to spoil it. If people haven't ridden it, I don't want to give too much away.
Give all the spoilers away.
I know. It puts you in the room directly after that. That was where the cast members were walking you for single rider. So you really do miss quite a bit of the experience. So if it's your first time riding, I do not suggest, if that's even available, I do not suggest doing that. But like I said, as of right now, it's not available, and Disney hasn't said one way or the other whether or not they plan to bring that back.
Yeah, I hope they do for Disneyland, at least, especially with the locals. I think that they would really enjoy that.
Yeah, much more beneficial for that particular crowd out there.
Definitely.
2 more single rider lines that Disney World has to offer. One at Animal Kingdom, which is the Expedition Everest roller coaster. That is a great single rider option. It moves very quickly. I have done it in the past and gotten front row. So like, you never know, right? But that one is a really good option if you've got the ability to split up with your party. You've got older kids or, maybe littles that don't want to ride. My family has utilized it before where like I stayed with my kids and my husband hopped on single rider and then we flip flop. So like I said, we used it for like a child swap situation. So we didn't have to worry about a lightning lane. We just used single rider, swapped. Our kids love to sit at the end of that little area and watch the trains come down through the mountains. So it was perfect for us. So that's a really good option for single rider.
Yeah. There's one more at Walt Disney World, and then I'll do Disneyland maybe.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last one is Test Track. Now, this particular attraction is currently under a lengthy refurb. So it was a single rider option prior to that. I will say, disclaimer, we don't officially know whether or not that's going to be an option when it reopens in the future. But it was a single rider line that did exist previously before it was closed. And it was a pretty good option overall for skipping that. But again, you're going to have to understand that you're going to miss out on a little bit of the kind of, I wouldn't call it a pre-show, but some of the queue things that happen before you get on the ride. You may.
Yeah, and I don't know what they will have in the new one. You know, they used to have the part where you would design your own car and whatnot. So we'll have to see what they have when they reopen it.
Yeah. So hopefully, fingers crossed, they still have a single rider option. It really depends on whether or not, which I don't anticipate them completely redoing the ride vehicles on there from what we've seen.
No.
And that's really the main reason why they had it, right? Those sit 3 across. So they like to have that option of a single rider with that particular attraction. So I would hope that it's still available whenever that reopens, whenever that may be.
Right. And I am going to comment from our friend Vinny. Says Remy has a line for single rider. However, they've never implemented it. They've never used it. And that is currently true. So who knows, in the future, they might end up using that one. So just keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, that would be a lovely addition to single rider line.
So needed too, right?
Right. Well, again, because that one will sit like 3 across. So it makes sense. And it's curious why they've never opened it to utilize that.
I wonder if it's because like those seats don't feel like, they feel very much almost like, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean boats and stuff where it's weird to have a stranger sitting next to you versus like some of the other single riders is like an obvious seat that you're in rather than I'm just going to hop in with your family in your row.
Yeah. It's very bench seat, right? You will probably touch the people next to you with your leg. Like it's just one of those things, right? Especially because that kind of the motion in Remy, right? It kind of moves you.
You're going to get
side
cozy
to side
in your rat with other people.
That is not a sentence that I thought I would ever hear in my life.
Yeah.
I love that. But yeah, that would make sense.
That one.
But that would make sense, right? It's just, it's not as individualized like you were mentioning. So that could be why. But
yeah,
it would be nice because that attraction has a lengthy wait. That's
and
for
it's
sure.
tough. It's tough to get in that one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that kind of wraps up your Disney World options for single rider. Kate, let's head over to Disneyland if you want to give us those stats over there.
So Disneyland, we have Smuggler's Run. It's pretty much the exact same thing as what Jackie said about Smuggler's Run in Hollywood Studios. So we don't need to go over it again. It's identical pretty much. And then the Matterhorn also has a single rider line. This can get pretty long as the day goes on. So I'd recommend if you're going to use it, use it kind of earlier in the day, maybe later at night, just because otherwise it can be significantly long. Goofy Sky School also has one. Although I have to say the queue for waiting for that one is so confusing because they like line you up on one side and then you have to like go across the traffic and go on the other side. And it was like, I had so much anxiety using that, but it does have one and it usually moves relatively fast. Incredicoaster has another one. That one's great. Usually the line is actually at the exit. Well, not the exit, really. It's like along the fence, like as you're headed towards the entrance, you'll see this, like, usually there's an umbrella and there's a cast member there, and that's the single rider line. So like you might not know what it is if you're just like walking by it. And then what they do is they give you like a little single rider like card pass that then they kind of lead you in kind of in the exit, and then you take an elevator up and then you go over an elevator down the other side, and then it's like
talking about this.
It's weird.
It's quite the trek to get there.
Yeah, but they kind of guide you through it, so they tell you where to go. So just know that that's where the line is like along the fence, kind of headed on the left side as you head towards the entrance. So it's kind of a weird one to find, I guess. Radiator Springs Racers has a very obvious single rider line that's labeled in the front. And this one, I always say, if the single rider line is past the bridge, there's like a bridge that goes overhead. If it's past the bridge, it's going to be a really long wait. You should come back later when it's shorter. If it's shorter than the bridge, if it doesn't reach the bridge, then go and enjoy your single rider experience. But it can take a really long time if it's past the bridge. I usually just like walk back out. I'm just like, I'll just go do it later.
That's good to know.
So then Grizzly River Run also has a single rider line, and this one, it depends on the day, of course, but this one usually moves pretty quickly. So I like using that one as an option. The Web Slingers also has a single rider line that's pretty obvious to go into, and that one moves pretty quickly as well. So I like that one. But it's not as fun to when you're with a family, because part of the fun of Web Slingers really is kind of competing against your family,
right?
Seeing who gets the more points. So that's kind of a bummer when you're not with them for that. And then Soarin' Over California has a bit of a like secret single rider line that's not labeled anywhere. And there's not even a queue for it. What you can do is you can go up and ask the cast members in the front, are you doing a single rider line right now? Sometimes they're not, but most of the time they are. In which case they will guide you like into the attraction, past everybody else, down to a single rider area, and you'll feel very strange, but it's okay. I promise. And you will skip significant wait time that way for that. But it is kind of like a hidden single rider line that not everybody knows is there.
Yeah, that's one that I wish they would bring to Epcot, right?
Yes.
For sure. There's no reason they couldn't, other than just logistics, right? So maybe it's just logistics, but even the one that they were testing over at Rise of the Resistance, they literally just like walked you up that like the cast member walked with you and dropped you off. So like,
yeah,
I don't know
why.
I
think that's the problem is because they have to have staffing in order to, it's a long walk to where they would need to drop them off. So I have a feeling it's a staffing issue more than anything else, you know?
Right. I'm just surprised that they've never even trialed it before, right? Like, because like, yes, staffing has been an issue for the last, 4+ years. But prior to that,
it's true.
It wasn't, it may have been still an issue, but we didn't hear about it as often. But like, I feel like it wasn't as big of an issue. So like, they could have tested it then.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I'm sure that there's a will, there's a way, but they just there must be some trade-off where it's just not worth it for them to do it. So in any case, at least at California Adventure, you can do that for that Soarin'. And it's Soarin' around the world. This is Soarin' Over California in here, but it's Soarin' around the world.
I put I didn't even think about it, and I just typed as I was going and adding them on the list.
Sometimes they bring it back for the Food and Wine Festival to bring over Soarin' Over California. So sometimes that's true. A broken clock is right twice a day, isn't that what they say?
Yeah, I got the first part of the ride right in our notes here. That's what Kate's talking about. I wrote the wrong name in our notes that we were reading off of. So, y'all know what.
Because I was reading it, so I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. Anyway, moving on.
Anyway, so all of those are good options for minimizing your wait times if that's an option that is available given your particular situation. Obviously, and we're not going to go into this in this particular episode, but obviously using something like multi-pass or single pass lightning lanes can also lower your wait times and help with this situation. Even those waits can sometimes be longer than anticipated. So having tips like the ones that we're going to talk about in your back pocket can still be really helpful, because the goal of the cast members is to give you about a 15-minute tops wait when it comes to lightning lanes. But things happen, right? Rides go down. There's, weather. You never know. So having these ideas in your back pocket can also be very helpful, even if you do plan on utilizing lightning lanes.
Yes. We did forget one single rider line at Disneyland. And thank you for Vinny in my chat who mentioned it. Is the Space Mountain one in Disneyland. So there is a space, you go in the exit.
That one.
Yeah, the exit of Space Mountain. And then there is a line that's kind of against the wall and they don't do it all day long necessarily. Like they'll end it at certain times a day. So you just check and see if they're doing it at that given time. But usually if it's like a time when the lines are really long, they're usually doing the single rider line during that time. So sorry, we forgot about that one. Thank you for your help catching that one.
Thank you to our chat here as we record this live. That's always helpful. The other thing that I did want to mention before we jump into these tips, I know you guys are like, we're here for tips. Where are the tips? They're coming, I promise. Is that there are some queues also that have some interactive elements to them that can be helpful to just note if you do plan on waiting in lines, or that there are certain ones of these rides that we're about to mention that you do plan on waiting on. There are some that have some interactive elements that may help if you've got little kiddos that need something to keep their interest. So in Disney World at Magic Kingdom, Haunted Mansion, if the standby line does go through that graveyard area, they do have some kind of interactive elements to that queue. The queue over at Dumbo is a really good one. If you know that you don't plan on using a lightning lane for it, or you're going to wait in line, even if the line is a little bit longer than you'd like, they have a phenomenal play area inside of there that's kind of, you don't know about it unless you've walked through that queue, where if the line gets really long, they'll actually give you little like buzzer pagers like you see at like restaurants if you're waiting for a table.
I haven't seen them use those in a long time though. Have you?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't waited for Dumbo in a while, so I don't know. They used to at one point in time. They may not be using them currently, or they may start using them again. We'll have to wait and see. But you do have the ability to let your kiddos run around for a few while you're waiting for the line to kind of go down a little bit more in that queue. The queue for Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh at Magic Kingdom has a great interactive area, tons of fun things for the kiddos to play with in like Rabbit's Garden area.
That's really fun.
Yeah, that one's got a ton to do with for the little kids and for older kids too. I think it's fun to like run around and spin everything and make it all go. And then Space Mountain at Magic Kingdom does, but this one is interactive using the Play Disney app. So if you've got that app downloaded on your phone, and you'll hear us talk about that app a little bit more later in the show as well, that one does have some interactive aspects to it as well. Seven Dwarfs Mine Train has a few little interactive spots that you kind of, it's the entire queue is not interactive, but you've got a few little pockets of interactivity.
Like the little water that you can put your hands under. They have the little diamonds that all the kids like to touch, and they have the spinning barrels that if you spin them all at the same time, then it like special things happen. So
that one's a good one. It's fun, especially because that wait can be very, very long. So if you're waiting standby, when you finally get to that part of the queue, it's like
I think those glorious fans in that queue. I love the fans in that queue. They make me happy.
It's nice. Yes, it's very nice. And then Big Thunder Mountain, this one is kind of hit and miss because sometimes they're working and sometimes they're not. But they do have some different interactive elements that even like if like the last time my family went through, they weren't actually like functioning, but there's still lots of wheels the kids can turn even if they don't actually do anything. So like my kids still had fun with that.
Yes.
So I would consider that still, there's at least something to keep them busy for a few seconds at a time with that. And then at Epcot, again, Soarin' has some interactivity using that Play Disney app that we just mentioned for Space Mountain. They've got trivia and some stuff on the big screens that are kind of like on the walls in the queue for Soarin' as well.
Yeah, that one's maybe a little bit better for older kids than younger kids because the trivia is really fun.
Yes, I would agree.
So over at Disneyland, I was trying to think, and I think they do more interactive queues at Disney World, I think, because there tends to be some longer waits there in general, not always. But I know there's not a ton of interactive queues. I'm kind of hoping the Haunted Mansion will be a little more interactive when they open up their new queue. They do have Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin that has a really interesting standby queue. It's one of like the most elaborate themed queues ever, and we don't always see most of it because the line's not always that long. Right. But the rest of them, like a lot of the Fantasyland ones and stuff, like they just have these kind of their older queues, and they're tiny little places, and there's not much going on. I was thinking of like California Adventure, like what can I think of? Even Soarin' doesn't have, there's things to look at. There's things to look at everywhere, but there's nothing that's necessarily interactive about virtually any of them.
And that's so true across all of the parks, right? There's always, I won't say always, but like 90% of the time, there's something in the queue to look at. Yeah. Whether or not your 5-year-old will find it interesting, that's kind of
but like the Ariel one in Disney World is fantastic because they have those little like animation that come up, and they have Scuttle that talks to you, and like there's stuff going on, which helps.
Yes. So a lot of the queues do have at least theming or different things that you can kind of watch or look at or read or so it just really depends on your particular family and what you think your kiddos will be interested in or not. Like my kids love looking at stuff in the queues, but not every kid may enjoy that. Some kids may not care at all about what's going on in the queue around them.
It's true. Indeed. Okay. So something that we wanted to point out is it's another helpful tip before we dig into like the actual like actionable things you can do in the queue is making sure you manage your family's expectations before you go on the trip regarding the lines, especially if they're people who don't go to Disney a lot. I feel like this is a really critical one. Yeah. So do you want to talk about that a little bit more, Jackie?
Yeah, I think just making sure that they understand what they're getting into for any particular attraction, yes. Especially because if you've worked with your group, we always recommend making a priority list for the park, right? So you know what your top priority rides are. Well, along with that, knowing and being able to tell your group like, hey, if we don't make it to rope drop, Space Mountain could have a 45-minute wait. What are we going to do about that? You know, just like having those kind of conversations along with that so that people understand like, hey, this is the best way to go about this. You're the pro. You're listening to Mom Street. You know all the tips that we've given over the past almost 2 years. So you got to manage their expectations. Yeah, almost. Oh,
goodness.
Isn't that nuts, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah. And the other thing, sorry. And then the other thing is making sure that you also give your family the chance to, if they have been to the parks, ask them which rides they're okay with waiting for, right? Yeah. If it's something that is like one of their top favorite rides, like my kids and Slinky Dog, they're going to be willing to wait probably up to 30, 45 minutes on a good day. And, you know, it's always going to be the parents' judgment of that or the adult's judgment for the kids, right? If they're having a really bad day, but previously they said they would wait, maybe not. But yeah, you kind of, you know your kiddos that you're going with best, but having them be able to give some input too, so that way you're not, this is all about not like wasting time, right? You don't want to get in a queue, wait for 10 minutes and then go, do we really want to wait in this line? Like, no, don't do that. Know ahead of time what you're willing to wait for, and make a plan, even if it's just the adults making the plan because the kiddos are too young or they don't know, you know, just kind of think about those situations when it comes to waiting in line. I think can be really, really helpful. The other thing that I will mention that I know is something that I'm going to have to do for my kids is I'm going to have to manage their expectation now that the lightning lane system has changed. And again, we're not talking about lightning lanes in this particular episode, but I know that I'm going to have to prep my kids that this system is different now. It's going to feel different. We're not going to use as many as we did previously, possibly, you know, so just kind of setting those expectations ahead of time. So that way you don't have major meltdowns and you're not wasting time in queues that you then end up getting out of to go do something else.
Yeah. And I have a good comment here from Katie in our chat. It says, we also split up at night when people want different things. And that is true. Like, especially if you're traveling with a big group, like, don't be afraid to split up. Maybe these 3 people are willing to wait an hour for this ride, but these 3 people over here are like, I don't want to wait that long for this ride. It's okay to go do other things for a little while and then reconvene, you know? Yeah. So, you know, give people a little bit of freedom in that, especially if you're traveling with a big group or party, because starts to feel like this slog where you have to do everything together, and then it gets to be resentment, and then it's like it's not a fun family vacation anymore. So give them the freedom. Maybe somebody wants to go sit down and have a snack while the other people wait in that line, and that's cool too. You know, everybody has different ways of doing vacation.
Yes, be flexible and be, you know, you just got to be in tune with the people you're traveling with, right? So
exactly,
don't travel with people that you're not gonna vibe with. That's my best thing.
Yeah, we need to just back up here. First of all, don't travel with people that you don't vibe with. I think that's great. This is rule number 1. And I think we've all done, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like a lot of us have learned from experience of traveling with the people that we don't vibe with and how that trip ended up. And that's where this advice comes from.
Yes.
If there's somebody you don't really get along with at home, it's not going to magically get better in Disney World. Just saying.
No. And like vice versa, right? Like I am planning a trip with my whole family. So like my parents, my sister and her family, and our family. But like we do vacations together every year. So like, yes, we've never done Disney all together with our kids and everything. But like we do so many other vacations together that like everyone's like, oh my gosh, there's so many people. There's like 10 of you going. And I'm like, we'll be fine because we already have done this and we already know like, hey, I'm going to do this. You can do that. But whatever you want to do is cool. Like we just know that about how our family dynamic works. So I'm not concerned about it.
Yeah. And definitely having those conversations in advance of like what the expectation is of how much time you'll spend together is, right. You know, because I've been also on trips where I thought our kids would get more time together with their cousins or whatever, but then they just went off and left and we didn't get to see them very much. And my kids were super bummed. And it's just like, okay, well, we didn't have that conversation. So that's partially on me also for not having that talk in advance and being like, hey, it would be great if we could do like X, Y, and Z together before we split up or whatever. So have the conversations, even if it feels kind of tedious or whatever, it's worth it because then when you get there, you're not having, standing around like, what should we do next or whatever, like you actually have had the conversations of like, oh, we're going to do this and then we'll split up. And it just makes it better overall.
Yes. And things like I know this isn't exactly on topic, but things like dining reservations or check-in rides at certain times or lightning lanes at certain times where you can all come back together can be really helpful for that. But all of that can still help with waiting in line because you'll have a plan going forth and you'll know what you're doing. Last thing I want to mention before we're getting to the tips, I promise you we're getting there, and this is something that I've experienced and a lot of some of our friends in our Mob Street community sent this in when we were asking for tips for waiting in line, is that some queues can be kind of like a sensory overload for people. So they can be loud, they can be overwhelming, they can be kind of a small, enclosed, tight space. So if you've got a kiddo that has some of those kind of sensory situations, just make sure you're prepared for them, right? If that's earplugs, if that's headphones, if that's utilizing child swap, whatever it may be to help them, just keep those things in mind. And always, always, always ask a cast member. If you're not sure what the line looks like, there's always going to be a cast member at that entrance point when you get in the line. Talk to them about your concerns and see what they have to say. They work that attraction. They know the queue.
And sometimes they can also advise you if there's a certain point where you can exit. If like it just gets too much midway, and they'll be look for this particular exit, and you'll be able to get out. So I think that's really helpful too.
Yes.
Alrighty. So why don't we dive into some specific things that you can do in line. And some of these are, things that are for different ages, so it's kind of runs the gamut. Your kids or family the best. So you can kind of self choose which ones make sense for you given your situation. But these are things that you can actually bring with you to do so you can plan in advance. So Jackie, what do we got at first?
Yes, so this is one of my family's favorites, and my kids have already begged me for our next trip to make sure that I bring my Hidden Mickey books with me.
Oh, yes.
They love, 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 love looking for hidden Mickeys, or like there are some of the books have like little scavenger hunts for them that you can do. It's super easy if you're waiting in line. A lot of them are organized by park and by attraction. So like just pull up where you're at and just like, okay, let's read through it and see. It doesn't take any prep other than just having it with you or having a page that's on your phone, browser that you've pulled up if you don't want to carry the book around with you in the parks. But looking for hidden Mickeys and other little hidden things in the queues is a great way to pass the time.
I do have also some free printables of Disney history scavenger hunts at disneycicerone.com. So if you're looking for some more obscure Disney history that you can hunt down I have one for Magic Kingdom and one for Disneyland. Eventually I'll make them for all the parks. I just haven't gotten there yet. But those are completely free to download and print and just use with your families for fun. So you can get those. Another thing, I feel like this is like one of the main things we do as parents, as moms, is snacks in line. I'll take snacks for me too, but I feel like
for everybody, all the snacks for everybody.
I feel like popcorn also is like a huge win. Like always popcorn. It's not the healthiest, but it's a good snack and it'll last a long time. And they just
Disney calories don't count as long as they're fed. That's what's important.
It's true. And I love that you notated that items that will last a long time, like lollipops or hard candy, will buy you more time while you're in line. Yep. And they even have those new lollipop savers, which...
Those are crazy, right? They make your lollipop look like a little like Mickey balloon on the outside. They're really
cool. Cute. They're like $10, so you have to gauge whether or not it's worth it for your family.
Right.
But
they're for those like gigantic face-sized lollipops that you get in like the confectionery, that kind of style. They're not as good for like the little, if you're looking for like Dum Dum Sucker. That's not what we're talking about. The like big giant lollipops.
Yeah, but it's nice because you used to put them back in the wrapper and then we get all stuck to the wrapper and stuff. Right. So that is a really nice option to have for those. But another thing you can do is you can separate whatever snacks you have into smaller bags to stretch the snack for multiple lines. So I think that's a really smart idea.
Yeah.
And of course, go ahead.
Sorry. And make sure that like whatever you're bringing with you, think about the weather. So if you're going to Disney World, don't bring something that's going to melt, you know? Just
it seems like common sense, but you know, honestly, I think we've all done it. Like we've all like not really thought, you know, we just toss it in our bag and we're like, oh yeah, that melted. That's a big old
So just think a little ahead about that, and make sure you're planning accordingly. But I also think grabbing some little baggies too, like if you've got a popcorn bucket, which Kate was mentioning, popcorn buckets are a great investment for families that are going to the parks. But then you could, even if you have little snack size baggies and you know you're going into a line and you don't want to bring your whole popcorn bucket with you, if it's like going to stay in the stroller or stay with someone who's not riding, then you can just like grab a handful, throw it in a Ziploc and put it in your bag you're carrying with you. That way you still have it with you when you're waiting in line.
Yeah. I got a tip from Christina over here in our chat. It says, I put the lollipop in a Ziploc bag on a ceramic plate in the fridge at home. So as a way to store it, which I've never tried putting it in the fridge. So that's an interesting suggestion. So thanks, Christina, for that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will say, I feel like somebody else also said, it was Katie said, I make my kids carry their own snacks. I do too, because my kids are older. So my kids, we pack individual day bags for them for the day. They actually pack their own now. I give them a list and they pack their own, which is fantastic. But I'd say how many snacks they have to pack in like each category, and they like put them in there, and then they kind of like, then, you know, whenever they need a snack, they pull it out whenever they're feeling hungry, and I don't have to monitor it as much as I did when they were small.
Right. And that's helpful for those kind of a little bit older, you know, older elementary, middle school kind of age. My kiddos are both still at the age where like, I'm going to end up carrying it for them, which is totally fine and just something that I prepare for. But you also have to, you know, as parents or adults traveling with kids, then consider, okay, what kind of bag am I going to have in the queue with me? Am I going to be able to hold the snacks and the other things that we're going to talk about? So again, smaller items, the better, you know.
Sure.
Just take all that into consideration.
And take a snack for the parents too, because you need snacks also. Like people, hangry is a thing. Yeah. Just admit it. We all kind of get there sometimes. So let's try not to be hangry at Disney, because that's how you end up yelling at your family who you love. So we don't want to do that. So we're going to have snacks and water and breaks and all those things. So that being said, let's move on. What other things can we bring in advance to do?
Yes. So this kind of goes hand in hand with when we were talking about hidden Mickeys, and Kate was mentioning her scavenger hunts earlier, but you can create or find online a parks like bingo card. So different things that you can look for while you're in the parks can be a super fun way to pass the time, because you can pull it out when you're in the queues and go, oh yeah, I did see this earlier, and kind of catch up on that. Even if you're in a queue that you maybe can't see much, you probably can still make that work for you. And again, you can be creative and make your own, or I am positive if you do some Googling, you will find a couple pre-made ones already online, or you can go to Kate's website and print off hers if you're going to Magic Kingdom or Disneyland.
And sometimes it's fun for the kids, like if you give them each their own too, especially if they're maybe a little bit older, then you can give them an incentive. Like if they finish all of it, then they get a treat at the end or something like that, or a small souvenir or something, you know, like the give them incentive for wanting to find it. And then they'll actually pull it out themselves and start filling it out, which is nice.
Yes, exactly. Another thing that you can have in your bag with you, or their bags, depending on their age, would be just a small notepad or a small travel size coloring book and a couple crayons or colored pencils, or a sticker book, something that is, you know, pocket size that can stay in a bag very easily that they can pull out. You can play, you know, that dot square game or hangman, tic-tac-toe, all those types of things can all be utilized all within just
But we have to stop for just a second. Because how awful is the hangman game? Like just as a principle.
I know my son learned it this last year at school.
This is a horrible game.
And I love it because of spelling, right? Like it makes them really think about the words, but it's like that's
If you can't spell, this is what happens.
He doesn't know, like I don't think he understands what that is actually implying.
It's just a guy with a stick coming out of his head on another stick.
Yep. So yeah, not a great, maybe, you know, it is what it is, right? We've all played hangman.
I know. I'm not arguing against the game. I just like never really thought about it till now. It's just like something you just accept. This just is. You're drawing a person.
Yep.
But there's something happening. I don't know. We can move on.
Anyway.
It's literacy, sure.
And if it'll keep them entertained, I don't know, come up with a different spelling game if you don't like Hangman, I guess.
Maybe some sort of Disney version,
Draw a Mickey Mouse with a smiley face or something.
There you go. Let's do that. Sorry, everybody. It didn't mean to take us down a dark path. Moving on. So yes, well, that's Hangman or Mickey. Tic-tac-toe, but also ebooks. This is like a big one for my daughter. She is a huge reader, and she just brought her little Kindle with her around Disney World, and she just read her way through all of the queues, and she was happy as a clam. But I that's great. Right. And you can also have stories that can be read aloud, or YouTube video stories for kids who maybe can't read yet. But I did want to add a note. This is like one of my biggest pet peeves. So just buckle up for just a second. Sorry, It's bigger than the Hangman thing. Please make sure that you have some sort of headphones for your children if you have a device that's making noise. And I know that's tough. I know especially with littles, it's tough because some of them don't want to put headphones on. There's all kinds of different kinds of headphones though for kids. Like my kids liked the ones that were just kind of like a soft headband that went around for a long time. They wouldn't tolerate any others. Some of my kids didn't like earbuds for a really long time. They liked just the over the head ones. Just it's really frustrating for people that are around you to have to hear your kid's device or adult's device. Quite honestly, it's like when I'm traveling in airports, people that watch their phones at full volume sitting in airports is like one of my biggest pet peeves. And it's like every month I have to like deal with this. So it's my thing. When I'm on the airplane, I can tell the flight attendant, like, hey, like, and they usually do it all automatically. They're like, you have to have headphones in. Anyway, sorry. That's just okay. Be polite to the people around you. Make sure you have headphones. That's all.
Yes. And there are so many apps that, like, if your kiddo is at a basic reading level, there are so many apps that you can download, like picture books for them or things like that. Now, you're going to have to consider, like, size of device. Are you going to want to be carrying a giant tablet through the queue? Maybe or maybe not. Those types of things. But definitely having something, there is absolutely nothing wrong with letting your kids be on a device in the queues at Disney World.
Especially after like a long day and everybody's tired and you're just trying to kind of make it through, like do what you got to do. There's going to always be people that judge you, but it's, that your kid has maybe not been on screens all day and you need a moment.
Exactly.
And that's okay.
Yes, for sure. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yes. So another thing that you can bring with you would be small, and I put this replaceable toys. So you don't want to bring your kiddo's favorite items into the parks with you because you never know what could happen. But little toy cars, bubbles, small fidgets, they make those little travel size, tiny little like Etch-a-Sketch toys, any of that type of stuff that is okay if it gets lost. Or, you have a couple of them back in the room that like the next day you have a little stash. Again, be respectful. Don't let your kid drive their car on the people around you. Those types of things. Just like be respectful. Listen, okay?
Yep.
But, any of those types of things that you can do. And like bubbles, obviously, probably not inside of a like tightly enclosed queue, but they may be great for an outdoor queue to help entertain if you've got, a little thing of bubbles. But any of those types of things that you can just give them to keep their hands busy will hopefully help.
Yeah, which is interesting because they have all those like bubble wands and stuff, and I feel like the bubble wand, I feel like I'm on a lot of soapboxes tonight, and I'm sorry. I'm just going to apologize now. I don't know. It's just me.
I have to put a disclaimer before this episode.
It's got a lot of soapboxes, so brace yourself. But, so funny because, like, the ones that they sell in the parks, specifically the Little Mermaid one that plays the same, like, I don't know, 10 notes over and over again.
Like, I own that one.
Oh, gosh. I can't. I don't know what. I'm like, did they have, like, could they have an option where it doesn't play the music but still does the bubbles? Like, that would be great. I don't know if it does or not because I haven't looked at it long enough, but I'm like,
no, it doesn't. It's got two options, and the one is music, no bubbles, and then bubbles and music. So yeah, that one my father-in-law bought for my daughter on a trip, and I was like, great.
Yeah, like I can't with those. And
but it's like her favorite thing in the world,
I
which
know,
like,
and it's so sweet. And I don't want to like take it away from kids.
No,
Like I get the
right.
kids love the bubbles. Like I totally get it. But I'm also like, why did they design it this way? For the parents too. Like I feel bad. At least I'm just walking by it. But like the parents that all day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So Disney, if you're listening, we just need a switch that allows you to turn off the music. That's all. Just saying. Just saying.
So
but if
true.
you can't turn it off and it's driving you crazy, if you need to make it softer, just add layers of tape over the speakers. Yep. That's what we do. So
exactly.
You just can't do it to a stranger's.
Hey, anyway. But you know what? I will say the ones without the music are really great because like even if your kids don't have them, chances are good that there's a child somewhere nearby you that has one, and like bubbles are great for everybody.
It's true. It's true. They're fun. I did want to add this on things to bring to do, and this one's a little bit more for older kids, but it's something that I've really been enjoying teaching my girls now that they're older, because I used to do it when I was in elementary school, and that is like, you know, taking a loop of string to do like Jacob's Ladder or Cat's Cradle, you know, like, and you can play the Cat's Cradle, you can actually like do together and go back and forth and whatnot. And so I've been teaching my girls how to do that, and it's shocking how much I can remember to do Jacob's Ladder in like 10 seconds.
Right.
From like
it's like muscle memory. You just go through and do it. Yep.
It's crazy how that works. But it's really fun because all this is just a piece of string that you need to do it. And that's so lightweight and easy to carry around. So that one's a really fun one, especially to teach kids in this like generation where they're very much into screens, kind of something that we used to do when we were, you know, analog life. So anyway, I think that kind of wraps up this section of things that in advance to bring to do. But what if you're like already there or you don't want to carry extra things with you? Jackie, what do we do with that?
Yeah, there are so many different games and things that like we're going to give you a list, but like I get it in the moment. Sometimes it's hard to remember, but like there are so many different games that you can do while you're waiting in line. My kids are finally old enough to like grasp the concept of I Spy, which like sounds super basic, but like so fun, especially if you're stuck in the same room and there's a lot to look at in the room that you're in. Being able to do that. And my kids are so funny because when we play, when we go on like long car rides, we'll play. And so they'll go, okay, this one's an easy one. And then it's like, okay, thank you for giving me.
To like specify, like, is it in the car or out of the car when it's
car rides are a little more difficult. And we have established that it cannot be something outside because we are moving down the hallway and down the highway at 65 miles per hour. It cannot be something outside. So yes, that's a good one. Or Simon Says, if you can do that in a more contained area, you know, sometimes Simon Says gets a little crazy, but just yes. So things like Simon Says are a really great one. A lot of us already have our phones, obviously, and this is that Play Disney app that we were talking about. So if you are not familiar, it is a separate app outside of your like Disney World, My Disney Experience, or Disneyland app that is called Play Disney. And there are so many different games on there that you can do, and it's all location based, right? So you have to be in certain locations to kind of unlock some of it. But there are so many different things that you can do in there. There are interactive pieces in some of the cues like we talked about. There's trivia on there. There's little like basic arcade style games at some of the points on there too. So lots of different options that you can do, and it's something you already have with you because it's just on your phone.
Right. And that works at Disneyland too. So it's not just Disney World, that's also Disneyland. And the Disney Play app in Disneyland, it's not in a queue, but there is Pirate Red, and then Esmeralda on Main Street. They're two like vending machines. So you can pay like $0.25, I think, to get a fortune from them, or you can use your Disney Play app and you can get 1 fortune per day for free using that Disney Play app. So it's definitely worth it to visit them and get a little free souvenir that way. So just a little tip.
Yeah. And something that I will just mention that's not exactly related to waiting in line, but if you've got younger kids that maybe don't want to ride the Star Wars rides at Hollywood Studios and you're trying to find something to do with them in that time, your Play Disney app is where you can do bounty hunting. If you've got your Magic Band Plus and that app, you can do that maybe with your little while you're waiting on the older ones to get off of Rise of the Resistance or whatever it may be. So there's lots on that app. You can download it from home, and there is a lot of it that you can actually do from home too. So you can look around and kind of get a lay of the land with that app before you even go on your trip.
It's just kind of fun to help build anticipation, for your kids or for you.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So another thing you could do is something that I've done a lot with my older kids, especially, is Heads Up or a similar like charades app, and it's just with a disclaimer, not a soapbox, just a disclaimer. Just be mindful of the people around you when you do this.
Yes.
Make sure that you're continuing to move with the line, and don't be so loud that it's obnoxious to people around you, especially if the space is enclosed, because this can get kind of wild. So still have fun, but just be mindful of the people around you when you play it. But it's really fun way of just everybody kind of doing charades together. It's a good way to bring the group together if everybody's been buried in their phones or devices and stuff.
Right.
It's nice to kind of pull everybody back together that way.
Yes, very true. This next one is one that my son, we really started with him on our last trip. And that is, and I know a lot of our community plays this, but Pokemon Go, which is like a massive game that I feel like so many different people of all ages and generations play. But Disney World, I know for a fact, is like a hotspot for all things Pokemon Go. I don't know about Disneyland. I'm assuming it's probably similar in the
played
fact
it.
That...
So full disclaimer, I don't know.
Yes. So I'm assuming that Disneyland probably is also in that boat, but lots of things to do on that game. And like I said, that's something that like my husband and my son like to play together. So I downloaded my son's account on my phone and would just I was like, yep, here, as long as I'm not doing lightning lanes, you can use my phone.
Yeah.
Or any other type of game like that. If it's something that's location based or something that you can play together, there's lots of stuff on screens. Again, like we said, there's nothing wrong with being on screens while you're waiting in the queues, because chances are good that you're not going to spend all day waiting in queues, right? So it's not like your kids are going to be staring at a screen all day long. It's okay. You can let them have screens in the queues. I promise it's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am getting lots of comments about Disneyland as a huge Pokemon Go place, and that sometimes they go to the parks just to play Pokemon Go. So everybody say yes, it's so fun. Both Disneyland and Disney World. So a fun one, especially if you haven't tried it. Maybe something new. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. You will get all of the fun things when you're in the parks, because there's lots of regional specific things and all sorts of fun little things that you can get from the parks that you won't be able to get when you're at home, maybe.
Yeah. So I put this on here because I forgot that you had Disney trivia kind of up above. So I said Disney trivia, but that's also like you could just Google. There's like millions of lists out there for Disney trivia. So there's all kinds of things that you can pick different categories and stuff. So if you don't want to use the Disney Play app and you just kind of want to pull up something on your phone, that's one way to go. Also something that we do with my kids, especially on long car trips, but sometimes we do it in long lines too, which is I packed grandma's suitcase. So most people know what this is, but you could also say I packed my Disney suitcase instead if you wanted to make it park themed. And it's good or wow, that's not what I wanted to say. It's better for older kids. Geez, wow. Because it's a memory game. So it's like I packed, my Disney suitcase, and then I put, and you say something that starts with an A, and then the next person has to say that thing that was an A plus something that starts with a B, and you have to remember all the things, So it's a really good memory game to play with them, and it does kind of take your brain off of whatever's going on around you. So it's helpful that way.
Yes. And
They're
something
giving me a
else
hard time because I'm an author, and I said good. I know I should quit now.
Please don't quit before the third book in your series is done. The people need to know.
Finish the third book, but that's it. No more book. No, just kidding.
Something else that is just, again, something that you may not think of. Teaching your kids thumb wrestling or rock, paper, scissors, again, within reason, right? You gotta keep it contained and don't let it get too wild and crazy as you're doing it. But just games like that can be a really easy way to pass the time.
Yeah. And it's also 20 questions, which is, I think most people know how to play that, but you can make it like Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars themed, or like with the attraction that you're in, can make it specific to that.
Similar to what Kate was saying with the grandma suitcase, but just like the alphabet game. So we do this in the car ride as well when we're driving down too. So like a lot of these I pulled because we play them in the car because we have a 14+ hour car ride when we come to Disney. But doing, finding something nearby that you can see that starts with A, B, C, those types of things can be really fun because some of the letters are tricky. So it kind of makes you think about how you can find, the letter Z in the line that you're waiting in or whatever it may be.
Zippers are always very handy for that.
That is very true. Good hack there for the alphabet game.
I'll be here all night.
Full of all sorts of fun information today on Mom Street.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Another game that you can do is like a would you rather. And again, all of this can be themed to when you're standing in line, right? So would you rather, it can be as basic as would you rather, if you're planning on what you want to do next, would you rather eat here or eat here? You can do it that. You can do crazy questions with that. Lots of different ways that you can do that one. And then another one that I saw that I really liked was you can create a story and it can be parks themed like line by line. So like you go through your group and each of you does a line at a time to create a story about the parks or about your day or whatever theme you may come up with for that one.
I like that a lot, especially as an author. I think that's a really fun one. I also have a comment from Katie in our chat that says we have the board games that are magnetic. And sometimes they are you can get the really small versions of them too. And that would be perfect because the pieces won't go flying if you're moving around. So that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing you can do is just talk to each other. It feels like a crazy thing to say, but like hold conversations about how your day has gone so far, your trip has gone so far, what's their favorite ride, their character, their show. I hear this all the time just when I'm like by myself in the parks. I hear just like people asking like, what was your favorite thing that you saw today or we did today? Like that's like a common conversation as we're all walking out of the park at night. But you could do a midday check-in of what they've loved so far. What are they still hoping to do, hoping to see, hoping to eat, highs and lows of what they liked and what they maybe it was something that wasn't as fun. I don't know if I talk about that one, honestly, but as a moment, I don't need to hear it.
It's good to process it, I think.
No, it is. You're right.
And some of this can also be helpful for the adults. If you have another day in that particular park that you're in, it can maybe help you frame like, okay, they really didn't like that. I thought they would, but they didn't. So we don't need to do that again. Well, they really loved this. I wasn't ready for them to love this. Let's add that to our list for the next time we're around. It can help you frame of mind kind of and get them just thinking about it so they're not thinking about their feet hurting and waiting in a line.
Yeah. I mean, and you can also say, like, was there something that you wanted to do that we didn't get to that you're bummed about? That if you have, especially if you have another day that where you could potentially go back and get to it, that would help a lot. So
yes,
good conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one that my oldest especially loves to do, he is our map kiddo. He loves park maps. I don't know why, but he just, that's his thing. So every time we go in, he grabs a new park map and that's part of his job for the day is the navigator. And sometimes we'll use my phone too, right? To like pull up the map on the phone. But he likes to like recap where we've been and figure out like, how are we going to get to where we're going next? And I'll ask him questions about the maps. So don't underestimate the ability of those maps to help hold your kids' attention. Because my kids love being able to look at that and figure out what we've done, where we're going next, all of that.
We do that with like our touring plans that we make in our touring plans app. My daughter actually made all of our touring plans this last trip, and she was the one in charge on her iPad of what we were doing next and where we were going and what we had yet to do. And she did a fantastic job at that. So as they get older, they can actually help plan a little bit, which is fun.
Yeah, super fun.
Something that we do in lines a lot, particularly my husband, because he's the one that's in charge of like feeding us, is we mobile order our food because you can, instead of waiting till you're out of line and then wasting more time, you can easily use that time wisely and order food. So just be mindful of the time that you might get out of it so you're not ordering it when you're still in line for pickup. So just be careful of the timing of that. But definitely a nice time because you got a captive audience, and it's otherwise you're trying to like, everybody's looking at parades or looking at other things. You're trying to like, what do you want to eat? And that's really tough. So in lines is a great place to mobile order food.
Yeah. And I've seen several people in my side of our live chat today talk about like also doing lightning lanes. So like if you're utilizing multi-pass or single or, lightning lanes and things like that, like planning your next ride or looking at times or all of that can obviously be done in rides in your ride queues as well.
Yeah. And everybody's making fun of me that I don't eat. It's shocking. I'm not good at feeding myself, and that's why they're all saying that. And and I also, Allie Beth is saying in our chat, need someone in charge of forcing me to eat because I'll forget. Yes. So it's good if you're traveling with a big party, if you have somebody who's like on the ball about like, hey, it's time to eat, like designate them as like the person who's like the reminder, like, hey, we haven't eaten in a while, because some of us forget.
Yep.
It's good to have that person. They're good quality people.
Yes. Because like we talked about, being hangry is a thing.
Yes, indeed. Another thing that I thought of doing in line is practicing mindfulness and being present. And, so often we do just kind of like pull out our phones or whatever, just as a habit of staring at our phones. I'm guilty of that as well. So I did this actually my last trip. I was in line, and it's practicing mindfulness. So this one is a way you can do it is you can do 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you could potentially taste. Don't actually eat anything in most of these cues unless it's your snack. But, this is just a way of getting you to focus on what is currently around you versus like what, like just escaping into your phone or, whatever. So that's especially nice in the queues because then it really does make you pay attention to what's around you for just a minute or two, which I think is helpful, especially for kids sometimes if they're feeling overwhelmed. So,
yes. Yeah, I think that's something I need to add to my list for my kiddos because they do get overwhelmed sometimes, and grounding them a little, I think, will be helpful.
Yeah, I have a kiddo who struggles with anxiety too. So we know we do breathing exercises, we do mindfulness, we do those kinds of things to just help ground us a little bit when things are feeling really overwhelming. So I think it's a good time for that because you have some time.
Yes, very true.
And I put this one on here, so I better talk about it. So especially with maybe older kids, this would be a little tougher with little ones. But hand clapping games, you could still do some with little kids. But the ones where you do like Miss Mary Mac, say, oh, play me, all those kinds of things. Like, yeah, exactly. Jackie's got it. She knows exactly what we're doing. So if you are rusty on your hand clapping games, this is a great opportunity. Just like the Cat's Cradle, like bring out the things you used to do way back in the day before we had cell phones and whatnot, and teach those to your kids because that's a really fun thing. And then they'll take it and they'll do it with their friends too. And then you're just perpetuating the traditions of our generation.
Someone's got to pass it on to the next generation. People need to know we cannot let these things die. Come on.
It's so true. It's so true. But it is a really fun one too while you're in line because, it's fun it's time to learn it. It's time to practice it. And it's fun. And it's not too obnoxious to the people around you usually unless you're singing really loudly. So, just have fun.
Right. And a lot of these, you don't have to prep your kids ahead of time. Part of your time in line can be teaching them, don't teach them ahead of time.
No.
Teach them in the line. And then you'll get several lines out of this one particular activity because it may take you 2 or 3 lines to teach them. And then they're going to want to play it for 2 or 3 more lines.
And if you have kids that will play together, then you've just
even better.
Yeah. You just, what is the word I'm looking for? You've mastered the parent. I don't know. There was a word I was going to use and I don't have it. I got nothing tonight. It's gooder.
It's gooder that way. You got 2 kids that can play together. It's gooder that way. And Kate used all of her brain energy writing her books earlier this week, and it's just one of those nights. I read
7 hours yesterday, and gosh. I think that my brain is just very tired, and I'm sorry.
You have nothing to apologize for. It happens.
I'm getting that book out to you guys sooner. That's the goal. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Very, very true. Yes. So I do want to do just a quick shout out and thank you to our friends in our Mom Street community who helped put some of these tips and tricks in our episode. So thank you to Duck, Hope, Jamie, Kelly, Allie Beth, Stevie, Kristen, and if I forgot anyone, I apologize, but thank you to our Mom Street community. You guys are wonderful. You always come through for us when we're looking for tips and advice and your input and your experiences. So thank you to those of you who contributed to this particular topic.
Yeah, this definitely wasn't one that we did on our own. This was a community effort to pull this one together. But I feel like there was a lot of things I never would have thought of that went on this list, which is so great, and now we have Arsenal.
Right. And that was the goal, right? Why Kate and I wanted to come back and revisit this topic, because we have touched on it here and there in bits and pieces, and this would be great, or this is an advice for this, or things come up just based on our general conversation. But now it's all in one place. So like I said, if you need one place to find it in a nice little succinct list, now you have that.
Yes. So before we completely wrap up this episode, we do have to do our Ask the Mom section of our podcast, which is where we get a question from one of our Mom Street community. And this one's actually fairly timely because of something that's happening at Disneyland right now. So this one is, how does the virtual queue work for Disneyland's Haunted Mansion holiday? We are going in 3 weeks and want to be sure to ride.
Yeah, so if you didn't know, currently the Disneyland version of Haunted Mansion is going under a huge refurb of mostly their extended queue area. Yeah. But they did open Haunted Mansion Holiday, which is a crowd favorite for the holidays. But it is only available through virtual queue because they don't have a queue to use. So the only way that you can ride it currently is through the virtual queue. So Kate, I know you just did this last week when you were out there. So tell us how it works.
Yeah. So there are 2 drops in the day for the queue. So 7 a.m. or noon. You can get either one from anywhere as long as you have valid park admission and reservation for Disneyland. So you can get, I think the noon one you can get even if you are in the other park if you have a park hopper. But for sure, the 7 a.m. one is for Disneyland reservation. And I got it for my hotel. So it's just like how they work in Disney World. You want to do the exact same thing where you want to be on, before in advance, make sure you have the right party put in, and then just hit the button a lot. Once it's 6:59, just hit the button over and over again. Make sure your Wi-Fi signal is good by using speed test in Google. You can check your signal and go off Wi-Fi or on Wi-Fi depending on how fast your signal is. Check that in advance before you try. The 7 a.m. one does go fairly quickly. The noon one, though, however, can stay open. If it's not busy, it'll stay open for quite some time, and then you can join it. But this queue does crawl pretty slowly because I hoped to get on it the last day. I did go on it earlier in my trip, but I hoped to get on my last day. And I got in, it was like 82 when I joined it. And it took 3 hours to get from group 82 to 126. And that seemed to be the pace for the entire trip. It's slow. So I would suggest getting, if you can get there in the morning, do the 7 a.m. one and do it one of the first things of the day. And then it just makes it easier. It also gets really chaotic over there because everything's closed in that area right now. So It's a lot of walls and you can't get through to go to Galaxy's Edge like you used to be able to walk through that area. It's completely closed off now. So it's just like kind of like a U-turn you have to make and get out of that area. So so just don't even go over there if you don't have a virtual queue. It's not worth it. And they will just turn you away anyway, if you don't have it. So, but beyond that, it works like anything else where you just then scan in. You'll have to get in the lines. They'll push you to somebody to get your thing scanned in and you'll go on up. So it's pretty easy to use. It's just, you just be mindful that you have to use it if you want to go on that ride. So yes, that is, like you said, very timely and a very big tip because that is not the norm. Normally it's just a standard queue and lightning lane and all that kind of stuff, but completely different this year with that refurb happening. Yeah, and it's going to get more popular as it gets towards Halloween, Christmas. I think it's popular now anyway because people just love it, but it's going to get even more so as we get towards the holidays when it's actually intended for. Yes. We're creeping towards, it's August now. Okay, sure. Yeah, right. We're heading towards fall, so. Right. Some of the decorations have started to go up and now people are like, right, spooky season. Oh, right. Haunted Mansion holiday. Right. I'm going to Disneyland. I should plan for that. So make sure you actually do plan for that. Don't wait until you're there and try to walk up to the ride because that won't work. Yeah. Like we tried to get it late in the day and it was like, we weren't called until like 10:30 at night. And I was like, oh, that's a long wait. So, yeah.
Yes, that's good to know about those groups, because that's the one thing that's just, you never know with any of these virtual queues that Disney uses, right? Is how quickly do they actually call these groups? You know, you could end up with group 30 and be called within the second hour of the park opening, or be called at 1 p.m. You never know, right?
Right. This one does seem, it seemed on every day that I used it, it seemed to crawl fairly slowly. So that's, but of course, everything is, you know, relative to all the things. But considering the capacity, it makes sense that it's moving fairly slowly.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you guys so much for those of you who have sent in questions for our Ask the Mom segment. We always love hearing from you guys. We love being able to answer these questions for you, even if they're not related to the topic that we're currently, you know, discussing. So if you've got a question for a future Ask the Moms segment, please send it to us. You can find us at Mom Street USA on all of our socials all over the place, or you can always send us an email, momstreetusa@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you everybody again who sent in all of their tips for the episode today. Jackie, what do we have coming up next for our next episode?
Yes. So our next topic is one that Kate had suggested that we kind of stick into our schedule. And that is spreading pixie dust and being kind in the parks. So that is where we are headed with our next topic for our next podcast episode.
I will try not to get on my soapbox too much in that
We're
one.
going to limit Kate to 2 per episode.
But no, I think it's definitely something that I've been thinking about a lot, about how we get to be kinder to one another, especially in a world that seems to be getting less kind every day. It feels like, how do we get to be that for other people in the parks? And so we have lots of really interesting ideas and things that maybe you haven't thought of yet for ways to do that in the Disney parks. So that will be our next episode. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Mom Street USA. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation of a couple of tips and tricks that you can use to help keep everybody entertained while you're standing in a line anywhere you are. And next week, we'll of course dig into spreading pixie dust and being kind in the Disney parks. And Jackie, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I'm excited that we have this kind of all in one place now, that I feel like I'm even going to refer back to our notes that we made on my next trip. And I'm equally excited for this next topic. I think we're going to have some fun ideas for different ways to spread a little kindness at the park. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, me too. Well, thank you everybody for being with us for this episode. And we will see you next time on Mom Street USA.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.